So I have here with me Josh Sanchez from the podcast Your Spiritual Best Friend. And I would like to ask you, Josh, go ahead and introduce yourself to the listeners.
Yeah, hey everybody. My name is Josh, and like Juan said, I create a podcast called Your Spiritual Best Friend. It's focusing on mental health and astrology and all that fun stuff. And Juan was so kind enough to come on, and he even did a live tarot reading for me, and it was great. Both podcasts that me and you did, Juan, were great, and I actually I got some feedback from it, so it actually was a lot of fun. I'm very thankful for being on, and just excited for the opportunity.
Thank you. And it was my pleasure to be on that podcast episode. And I wanted to ask you first, because I'll tell folks at the end how to find that podcast episode, how to find your podcast in general. What inspired you to start Your Spiritual Best Friend?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Juan. So it's actually crazy. So I've been doing podcasting probably for, I would probably say like 5 years. Because I started in undergrad my freshman year, and me and my one friend Dante, it is so long ago. We did sports. So me and him would
Mm.
recap like Sixers games. Just for a side note, I'm in the Philadelphia region. I live in Delaware, so diehard 4 for 4 Philly sports fan. But yeah, me and my bro Dante, we did that for a couple years, and then he ended up going in his own path, and I ended up picking up the sports and doing that. And I finished that through undergrad, and once I was trying to decide like what grad school I wanted to go to, because I graduated with my psychology degree. I figured out that I wanted to get my master's in clinical psychology. So my first semester into the program, I start because we all have like that intuition, like that gut feeling where it's
Yes.
just like you feel like you need to do more, or you need to like this direction is you feel more yourself. And I honestly, I woke up in like September, and I was just like, what are some ideas? Like, because I really want to help people. Now that I'm in my graduate school program, I'm starting to realize like the importance of helping people, the importance of taking care of yourself during this journey, the spiritual journey we are all on, Juan. And um, I woke up one day and I was like, yeah, like I really want to help people. I want to connect with people. And I've done podcasting before. So I was like, you know what? Like, let's try this podcast out. And I will say this podcast that I've done now, I have 32 episodes scheduled. So a couple
Wow.
episodes are going to drop within the next couple weeks, but it's been crazy just interviewing people. I've talked to people from LA. I've talked to some PhDs now recently. I have a scheduled podcast with a actress. Yeah, sorry, it took me a little bit to process that. And
All good.
yeah, like it's crazy how mental health and spirituality, it just connects you and it opens you up to so many opportunities. And I do podcasts a lot, Juan, so I can definitely go on a little bit of a tangent.
No, all
But yeah.
good. No, that's wonderful. And I'll admit, sports and myself were like oil and water. So I'm really curious to hear how I, I mean I have so many questions because I feel like in this culture we live in, um, unfortunately, masculinity is not usually associated with spirituality. I feel like spirituality has, unfortunately, it's people have let it take on like it's a spirituality is more of a feminine, nurturing thing where we're all spirits, we're all souls, right? We're all spiritual, no matter what our gender identity is. But I want to ask you, I feel like a lot of people attribute sports to masculinity, and people might see astrology very differently. So what was that transition in podcasting like for you? And how do you feel about being a cisgender straight man who has dipped your toes in both worlds and now is really full in I'm sure you do sports still, but you have this other interest which is astrology. And like what is the feedback you've gotten, and how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I will say, Juan, that's a really great question. And honestly, like I've definitely taken some time to think about it. And honestly, like for me, I've always been the person where I love to take on new challenges. I love to take on new projects. So for me, like I can definitely see that stigma. You go from sports, it's masculine, the strongest man survives. Like especially with football, it's all about like hitting hardest, the biggest, fastest, strongest people in every sport. And I definitely think that's part of the reason why like the ratings are high. But I also recognize, and I've definitely a lot of this has been through my own spiritual growth. Because if you would have asked me this question in high school, I would have been like, oh yeah, like gotta be the strongest, gotta. But like through the course of studying psychology, through the course of meeting like my girlfriend, meeting her friends who are also very spiritual in their own way, like it's opened the door for me for many new opportunities. So to answer your question, Juan, like when it came to that transition, for me personally, I was completely fine with it. I was like, let's talk about life. Let's talk about like spiritual stuff, because I'm realizing more and more, like through my own personal trauma I went through a lot of those things. Like if I was able to just learn, take a couple steps as to just journal or just to really like understand myself in high school, I would have probably been like 10 times better, you know? So it's just, to answer your question, it definitely was a little bit of a shift, you know, like a lot of people were like, oh, like what happened to your sports stuff? And I was like, I mean, it's still there. Like, obviously, like if I'm sitting in a bar, like, yeah, I'll talk about the game. I know what's going on. I know the Super Bowl or the big game. I don't know if we can say Super Bowl. Because you know how it is with audio, you know, it's like, I don't know what it's
Oh,
called, but
branding and
yeah,
advertising.
branding.
Well, I ain't that popular yet, so we'll see what happens.
Well, yeah, I used to do radio too, so I remember every time I said Super
Ah.
Bowl, I was like, oh my god. So, but yeah, so like I know who's playing in that game and stuff. So obviously, I could still talk about sports, but for me, it was mainly just like I just had this big calling, the spiritual calling to connect with people, talk with people, and I definitely think it's good because there needs to be more straight men that are comfortable with talking about their feelings. I know in terms of football, sticking with football, I know Lane Johnson, two Eagles players, Lane Johnson, the starting left tackle of the Eagles, and Brandon Brooks. He just retired like a couple weeks ago. But if you actually Google them, they actually are some football players that have started to speak out about playing football with anxieties.
Hmm.
It's actually a really great story. I 10 out of 10 recommend, because those are also two other straight men, you know, that are playing sports that are trying to get that conversation rolling. I also know Kevin Love, from the Cleveland Cavaliers. He talked about playing through anxiety. DeMar DeRozan's another basketball player. So I definitely think that the traditional way, you know, of masculinity is to suppress your emotions and just fight it or be stronger or whatever that nonsense is. I definitely feel like now there still needs to be a lot more work to be done, obviously. But I think having more straight men talk about anxieties, talk about what they're going through, or talking about like trauma in which they faced at a younger age. Because there's definitely a lot of football players that, I mean, we all know the news. There's a lot of football players that do a lot of crazy stuff off the field, you know, and
Hmm.
it's just like, if who knows, maybe if they were able to talk about their trauma, maybe they would not have made those mistakes. So you never know, you know, and I just definitely think as more players start to speak up, as more males are starting to get into the mental health field. I interviewed somebody last week. She was a psychologist, and she's gotten the most men that she's ever gotten since this pandemic.
Wow.
So there is steps moving forward, but are we at where we need to be? Clearly not. There still needs to be a lot more work to be done. But I definitely think with my podcast, I know that's one of my goals, is by me being like a straight man, just having open conversations with people from everywhere and whomever. I just hope that people listening to that can learn something new, you know, or like, hey, like I've really taken on, because I mentioned journaling a lot. Like, hey, like I've listened to your podcast, I've journaled a little bit more. And especially for men, like I obviously would love to help everybody. But obviously getting that straight men population to be more comfortable with talking about their feelings, talking about what they're going through, talking about their trauma, is definitely a big first step. And hopefully as I get my master's and continue to grow, I definitely want to keep that trend going, because it's important to, at the end of the day, our relationships, the longest relationship you have in this world is not with loved ones, not with family, it's with yourself. And if you're not taking the time to understand yourself, you are not going to take the time to understand others or find love, healthy love, obviously,
Right.
and stuff like that, because trauma manifests in all forms. So I know I can go again, Juan. I can talk all day, you know, but
This
I
is
think that was a really
wonderful.
good
No,
question.
no, this is a TED talk I'm experiencing here, and I hope people listening feel the same way. Now, you took the words out of my mouth. I also feel like it's very common in the spiritual work, or this realm of spirituality, and people, you know, discussion circles, people talking about it, that you find a lot of women and a lot of gay men, mostly women. And you took the words out of my mouth that like I would love to see more straight men, more men in general. I would say just be more comfortable talking about things on a soulful level, talking about mental health, anxiety. So I'm totally with you there. And you're mentioning about something about your astrology. I think your girlfriend, your relationship, and their friends. What was your relationship to or with astrology before you started the podcast?
I started learning a little bit of it in undergrad. So funny story, and I might go a little off tangent here, but then I'll end
All
up to
good.
your to the main point. So I went into college because you know how it is. You're 18, you're trying to figure out what the heck you want to do with your life. And obviously, if you live in an age of social media, there's a lot of pressure to immediately jump into something. And I knew I always wanted to do some form of communication. I'm very social. I like to talk to people. So that aspect never changed, but I actually went into undergrad, as a education and communications major. So I wanted to be a teacher. I always had this need to help people.
Hmm.
But sophomore year, first day into field placement, for those who do not know, if you're an education major to be a teacher, sophomore year, you have to go into like a field placement where like you study and you learn from other teachers. And I went in there day one. I talked to the teachers about the academic standards. They were like, yeah, like it's all about the standards. It's all about performance, test scores. And if you don't have the best test scores, you lose your job as a teacher. Plus, they're severely underpaid. They're not treated with enough respect. I was like, yeah, I'm out. I can't do this. So I switched majors from education to psychology. And I took this intro to psych class, and I loved my professor. She was great. We learned a lot about the brain, the mind. We learned a little bit about like Piaget's theory, and all the theories and stuff. And I really liked that. And as I was starting to learn that, a couple of my friends from undergrad introduced astrology to me a little bit. Like I always knew that I was like a Taurus,
Mhm.
but I didn't know the other stuff because I had no idea about the moon and all that stuff. And it took until I met my girlfriend and her best friend. She was from Indonesia, so she's both of them were just talking about astrology in general, and I was like, huh, like, and then my girlfriend's friend, Kina, by the way, she ends up saying like, hey, like, what's your chart? Like, when were you born and stuff? So I give it to her, and she puts in the information, and then she screenshots this chart similar to what I did with you, Juan, on my podcast and what I do. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. So I'm not gonna lie to you. That first night, I probably stayed up till like 4 or 5 in the morning, did not get a lick of sleep, just reading.
Wow.
I'm reading my moon. I'm reading my Mercury, how I communicate. I'm talking about my Venus, and I start reflecting on like past relationships. I'm like, damn, like that makes sense. Like all my relationships have been similar in some way, and so like, yeah, like that's really where the passion for astrology started. And then over the years before I recorded my podcast, I started talking to my family about it. I did my family's charts. I did my dad's chart on his side. I started doing cousins. I started doing best friends. I did my best friend's chart. When I was in like parties too, as I'm meeting new people, I'm like, hey, like I'm learning a lot about this astrology stuff and they're interested in it. So I just feel like this pool, every time I talk to somebody, we're talking about astrology in some way, shape, or form, which then led to like the podcast. I was like, hey, I can have life conversations and connect astrology to it a little bit too. I think of astrology as it's a great tool to understand yourself, but it's not the only tool to understand yourself. Obviously, there's a lot of other things. There's therapy, there's meditation, there's so many other tools to help you really just focus in the moment and help yourself. But astrology, I always view that as one of those tools that can really help you.
That's amazing. And what an interesting way. Like I love how you you delved into doing birth charts for people by starting with the people around you first, like your loved ones, your family. And yeah, I that makes total sense. That astrology is one way to understand yourself. And that's how I feel about like mediumship and reading tarot cards. Like those are not the only ways to get in touch with your spirit or with those on the other side. Like there are many ways to do it, and there's no right or wrong way, but they're definitely good tools. And astrology is definitely one of those tools too. And actually, speaking of spirit, I know that you've had some experiences with the other side, the supernatural, that you like to share with us. So I want to ask you, what has been an experience for you that has stuck out the most?
Yeah, this actually happened, I would probably say like a couple months ago. So like I've always been like interested in like spirituality and like the spirit realm. I've always had like curiosity for it, but I actually was doing a DoorDash show how I pay the bills is through DoorDash. So side note, guys.
I was an Uber
Um,
driver once, so I totally get it. Totally get
oh
it.
yeah, definitely. I've done Uber, all that fun stuff. But just continuing a little bit. So I was doing this DoorDash and I was jamming, blasting music because in Delaware, there's a lot of like back roads. So like I'm driving it through these back roads and I hear like it is not, I'm not gonna lie, like as I was driving, I heard like a little voice in my right ear telling me, like, yo, Josh, like wake up, chill, like focus. And I'm not gonna lie to you, second I heard that voice, immediately a deer just comes zooming. And luckily I slammed my brakes and everything. And like, no, there was no damage, nothing happened. But like, that's a moment that really stuck out to me because I have had moments where I have, when I am stressed, I will talk to like my pop-up in his grave. I remember for his birthday, me and him had a glass of wine together. So I don't know if that was him, but I heard like a voice in my right ear tell me like, yo, like wake up, dude. And that was definitely something where I was like, damn, like that's definitely a sign. That's definitely something like I'm always big on like signs, or messages. It might not come from like an actual spirit in general, but like I know I keep getting these emails for this one event to go to. I keep getting these emails over and over and over again. I'm like, yeah, like that's a sign for me to let's try this out. That also led me to like meeting you as well, because I noticed you were into like a lot of like Terra One and you were into like the spirit realm a lot and stuff like that. I was like, yeah, like that's something's telling me to contact you. So it's just like these are all things for me that I believe in. Whether that's good or bad, you're supposed to just take your experiences that you learn from, and learn from it. Everything's meant to learn. But to answer your question, Juan, that was definitely like a more recent experience that I was just like, wow, like I definitely think my grandpa saved me there. He's a real one. I hope he's listening.
Oh, he totally is. And you don't need to talk to a medium to tell you that, but that is incredible. That's an extraordinary experience. And it sounded like it was a short phrase told in your ear, and you're probably going to remember that for the rest of your life or for a very long time that you had that experience. And wow, that's extraordinary. And yeah, I totally believe that the universe talks to us in signs. And what are some other signs you feel like you've experienced over the years, or have there been any that just have stuck, like similar to this experience, that have stuck to your mind that keep coming up for you, that used to come up for you a lot?
Yeah, like for me, I know for myself, like I've had, I don't really dream a lot, but when I do dream, like it's very detailed. And I've had some dreams where like I dreamed about it and it actually became like reality. And this is a dream that happened way back in high school. So I don't know why I still remember this, but like you said, Juan, maybe it's just to prove your point. Like you really remember these experiences. But I had this dream for like probably a year straight where, because I played football, I didn't really have like the opportunity to get a lot of starting playing time. But like I had this dream that I was actually a starter of a game one day, and I caught an interception and I ran for a touchdown. And it's crazy because the whole game, I ended up starting the game because there was injuries from other guys. My best friend ends up breaking his leg in the game, and he had a penny. It's just all coming back to me now. He had a penny. He put a penny because he found a penny heads up before the game, and he put it in his sock, the same leg that he broke. So he gets taken out. I end up getting an interception, and I run for the touchdown in the game. And the team I dreamed was blue, and the team we faced was blue. So it was just crazy. Like all the events, like my friend getting hurt, me coming in, getting an interception, running for a touchdown. I was just like, wow, like it's so crazy how I've been dreaming this event and it actually happened. So I know that's definitely like an experience that I never forget. I was just like, damn, like
Wait,
this is definitely interesting.
wait. So in the dream, your friend also hurt that leg?
Well, no, he didn't hurt that leg exactly, but he had an injury in some shape or form.
That's
Now I didn't.
fascinating. I mean, it's not fascinating
Yeah.
that he hurt himself. It's
Oh, I
fascinating that you
know.
dreamt about it. I want to clear that up. That's wild.
Yeah, I
Wow.
know. Yeah, and the dream didn't specify like what specific friend got hurt, because
Yeah.
because if I knew exactly what friend got hurt, I would definitely, if you guys ever have dreams where like a family member gets hurt or who gets hurt, reach out to them and be like, hey guys, I had a dream that this happened, just looking out for you, be careful. So
Yeah.
I want to make that clear when it comes to this. Like I had no idea who
We don't want
friend
to
it
piss off
was.
your friend.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah.
You should have been like, bro, you should have let me know,
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
wild. Yeah, I just, it blows my mind. I keep saying I, but it blows my mind how like different people get different kinds of signs. Like for some people, like for you, like I've never had dreams like that before, and that's fascinating. And you might have, I know you might have some other experiences or supernatural experiences that you've either heard through your family, or maybe you have some more that you've shared that you've had before yourself that you would like to share. So are there any others that come to mind for you?
Yeah, so besides the dreams and stuff, I know for myself, I'm very big on like certain places give you like this weird feeling, or like for me, like whenever I go to the beach, I get like this feeling inside. It's just different from other places. And I definitely think like there's some form of like past life connection there. I've always been big on that because there's certain places, there's certain foods. Like you ever wake up one morning and you're just like, damn, like I'm really craving a cheeseburger or something right now, or I'm really, and it's weird because it comes out of nowhere. It's like I'm not even thinking about food for 1 second, but now all of a sudden I'm craving something. For me, it's ice cream, or for me, it's cookies. I'll wake up one morning, won't don't I go like a couple weeks without eating cookies, and I wake up one morning, I'm like, damn, like I'm really craving something. I me personally, I think that's sort of like your ancestors or like your past life um being like, hey, like this is a food that I miss to eat, can you please eat this and enjoy this for me, so like those are some things that I've experienced when it comes to food, other than like dreams and stuff. And then also places, so like I'll go to like the Delaware beaches. um I went to the DR in the summertime. I really felt just like at peace. Like it wasn't like it's just, it's kind of hard to explain. It's like your intuition, it's like that gut feeling. It's like I've been here before. It's like I feel this place before. And obviously I'm not Dominican, but I don't know. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. But like those for me, other than like the dreams and obviously like the one experience with my grandpa, it's more like cravings of food, and also like going to places. Like for me, going to a park, watching a sunset, whatever that is, I just get like this big, deeper meaning than usual, than what I am feeling throughout the day.
That's me and stars. When I'm under, I mean, here in New York City, we rarely see stars, but something that Josh and I realized in the last few months is that, well, he lives in Delaware. My family lives in Delaware. I'm originally from Miami, but my family moved to Delaware 2 years ago. And so when I'm in Delaware with visiting my family, I step out into their backyard and I see so many stars. And when I see stars, like the way you just described seeing a sunrise or a sunset, I just feel like just I feel small, but I also feel really big. Yeah, it's hard to explain. It's like you're part of something big, and you're also that small. You're a small part, but a big part. And yeah, I've never heard that perspective about craving foods and your ancestors. Because if that's the case, my ancestors must have had many feasts in their lives. Because I am such a foodie. I'm such a big foodie, and I can't. Everything you mentioned: cheeseburgers, ice cream, cookies. I mean, that's not me on a weekly basis, but I could if I wanted to. So that's fascinating. That's really fascinating. And what is your perspective on? Because I heard you mention past lives. So what is your perspective on past lives? Do you feel really? Have you felt like a solid connection to a past life, or something you want to explore more?
Yeah, that's definitely something I want to explore more when it comes to past lives, because I know with astrology, connecting that a little bit, your north node and your south node, so they're sister signs. So on your chart, like if let's say like your north, for instance, for me, my north node is in Virgo, so that means my south node is in Pisces, because Pisces and Virgos are sister signs. And that's really where the idea of past lives really started to hit me when I was learning more about astrology. So your south node is sort of like the mistakes you made in your past life, and your north node is supposed to be what you're supposed to learn in this lifetime that your past lifetimes did not learn from. um so for me, for Pisces, it was like people pleasers, not having any boundaries, whereas Virgo, it's always about, because it's ruled by Mercury, which is the planet of communication. So with Virgo, it's all about setting boundaries, setting your limits, knowing what's going on, being aware of yourself, being very attentive to detail. So I've realized this through my own life. I've learned to set more boundaries, be honest with people, if I'm not feeling like going out, like, no, I can't do this, or like, because I've always had this passion for helping people. But even with that, though, you need to know your limits. But that's where the idea of like past lives has been introduced to me as I've been learning more about astrology, learning about this north and south node. So I definitely want to learn more when it comes to that. I definitely feel like I've had this feeling, whether that's food cravings or whether that is like going to places or even like talk to me while I was driving, so it's sort of like the idea is there and I'm very curious to learn more.
Hmm.
But when it comes to past lives in general, I'm definitely very, very new to like the whole past life, past life spectrum. But it's been interesting for me, and it's very interesting, and it's definitely something I want to learn more in the near future.
What I'm thinking of right now is like I don't know a lot about astrology, and I'm just now starting to learn about astrology. And I feel astrology really helps me as I do readings for people. And it sounds like past lives based on the South Node, North Node, that for you exploring more about past lives could help you with astrology because it's obviously very intertwined. So I mean, I feel like there's always something to learn with the things we are like. You're into astrology. I'm into mediumship and tarot cards. I feel like I'm never going to stop learning or adding more things onto it to just kind of expand my thinking, and over the course of it sounds like you've been doing the podcast since September, and before then you had very shortly before then discovered astrology or how to read someone's birth chart. For someone who wants to start learning about astrology, what would you recommend to somebody? Like if someone just knows nothing about it and wants to learn.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So what I would say to people that are just starting out is to one, learn about your own birth chart first, because it can definitely be overwhelming. There's a lot of planets, there's literally like so many planets I can't even like think about. Like for me, like I'm still learning, like I don't even know the degrees yet and stuff. There's just a lot when you look at it, it can be intimidating. So what I always tell people is just to Google your sun and moon, like Google. Well, so for instance, for me, like I'm a Taurus with a Capricorn moon. So I'll Google, okay, like what is a sun in Taurus? What is a moon in what is a Capricorn moon, And then you just read about your own birth chart first. So that way you get a better understanding, like, hey, like this is I'm starting to understand this. And I always tell people, even when you're that curiosity is what's going to help you, like learn more, that passion, that drive to like want to learn more. So you start from there, start by learning the basic planets. For me, it's your sun sign, your moon, your Mercury, Venus, and rising sign. So those are like the five that I started out with that I really learned. And then once you get a better understanding when it comes to that, start doing your friends charts, start doing your family's charts. So you just start small and notice the conversations that you're having with them. Because I know for my family, they were all interested into it. They're like, damn, like this is definitely new. Like, where did you come up with this? Where did you figure this out? Some websites I recommend, Cafe Astrology. It's great. You can literally, all you need is your birth time, your birthday, and where you were born. If you don't know your birth time, that's okay. It's just the only thing that's going to be messed up is your rising sign. And that's like who you appear to people, first impressions. But other than that, like just go on Cafe Astrology, Google, put in your information, and then take a picture of your chart and then Google each placement. So that way you get a little understanding. And once you start to understand that more, like I said, just keep talking to people about it, because the more you get people talking about it, the more passion you get for it. But with anything in life, though, you have to have that curiosity, that passion to want to do it. You can't, because anything you do, it's going to require some research. But another website, just to conclude this topic, is the horoscope.co. That's a website I have all my guests come on, and all you do is just Google your sun and moon. And I forget who created the website, but she did a great job, her and her peers. And they just do like a little basic reading on your sun and moon. And astrology is really cool. I 10 out of 10 recommend you guys to just check it out. It's not the only tool, but it's definitely a cool aspect that you can learn more about yourself. And I know, just adding to this topic a little bit more, like there's sidereal, there's also like your soul chart too. Like these are all things that if you're passionate for it, you start out with your basic chart and then you learn more. And it's definitely interesting, and I 10 out of 10 recommend it.
It's fascinating, and thanks for dropping those website names because I feel like someone like myself, actually, when you and I started talking, I think I told you on your podcast that I had just started looking into learning more about astrology, and then you reading my birth chart, which is absolutely awesome. I felt like I really want to learn more about it. So you giving these recommendations is for people listening, but also just as much for me. So I really, really appreciate it. And just kind of like to wrap up a little bit, like zooming out of the stories you told, like everything you discussed tonight between your supernatural experiences, your interest in astrology, how have these experiences and these learnings how have they impacted your life today and the work you do today, whether it is your podcast or any other work you do? Like, do you feel like doing this work, astrology, having these supernatural experiences has made some type of difference in how you conduct yourself?
I definitely feel like when it comes to everything, it's definitely been a spiritual journey. For me, like I played sports all my life. I've always been very busy, like when it comes to me taking on like tasks and me taking on life projects and sports, school, work, and with anything in life though, it's your relationship with yourself. Like I said a little bit earlier, is the most important relationship you can have with anything in this lifetime, because by doing things to help understand yourself, you're able to help others and you're able to do whatever you need to do in life. And I definitely think there's been times in my life where I'm doing so many tasks. And like I said, that South Node in Pisces, not having boundaries for people, constantly going above and beyond, constantly doing this, constantly doing that, that I kind of at times lost myself. I was struggling with finding myself mentally, really trying to I lost passions, like it's just like with astrology, spirituality, learning about psychology, it's really helped me learn more about myself. Obviously, like I'm learning more about like the human mind, and I'm learning about like anxieties, depression, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, like I'm also learning more about myself. And I definitely think this podcast has really helped me because I've always had this need to be social and connect with people. That's something that it took me a long time to feel that. But with astrology, with psychology, and also everything that I've learned to really just love myself more. I can't even tell you, Juan, like now I go alone to eat food. Like I never did that. I was so reliant on, this is just an example. I was just so reliant on my friends and like previous partners and even family members to do things that like I never really took the initiative to do things on my own. So like with all that, like it's really helped me build a stronger relationship with myself. And really at the end of the day, I'm learning more to love myself, and I will say, like, I really love where this is taking me. And I definitely want to continue to grow from these experiences, connect with more people, and get more people help, to understand themselves, because I'm realizing more and more that even like family members I've talked to, like they've had moments where they've really like questioned like what they're doing. Because I mean, especially being in a capitalistic society where it's all about production and productivity, you lose yourself in that process. The idea of taking an off day, because like the 40-hour work week is definitely intense. And now there's studies showing that 40 hours is not the right number to work a week. That's just a small example. But at the end of the day, just with everything, to answer your question, Juan, it's really helped me understand myself and really grow from that. So I'm really thankful and appreciative of learning more about astrology, learning more about psychology, and growing. So very happy.
That's absolutely great. And I know people can't watch us, but if you don't mind me saying, Josh, like I can see how passionate you are about everything you just talked about and how much you care. And that's just absolutely incredible. And it's priceless. And it's so wonderful to hear that these projects you've taken on for yourself have helped you to get more in touch with yourself. It's not about, sometimes people feel I'm going to speak for myself. Sometimes in the past, I felt I needed to get busy to escape from myself or escape from something. And doing this work or focusing on the human spirit or even probably the human psyche, it it compels us to think even more about to ground ourselves in ourselves a little more. And it's no longer an escape. It's really about confronting things or sitting with things. So everything you just said is just like I totally resonate with it. So thanks for sharing that. And also I wish you the absolute best as you continue with your studies. Like amazing and good on you for pursuing the goals you have. And it sounds like you're going to be of someone that's going to be such a wonderful support for people. You are right now, but even for even more people once you pursue the career that you're pursuing. So best of luck for that.
Yeah, thank you, Juan. I really appreciate that. And same for you as well. Like I love podcasts like this, we're just talking about spirituality, and talking about just life, that at the end of the day, I definitely think more conversations like this need to be made, because we got to normalize mental health and talking about like our own journeys. We have to normalize that. Don't keep everything inside, you end up blowing up and going crazy.
100%, 100%. Well, tell our listeners how they can find out more about you.
Yeah, so I have a link tree. Just search your spiritual best friend. You click on that link tree, and it has the links to everything. I even put find a psychologist. So I have a little tab where if you guys are need you need to talk to a therapist, you need to talk to a professional. I have a link to Psychology Today. You just click on that. You Google your zip code, and you'll find therapists in your area. That's definitely something I 10 out of 10 recommend, but you can just check out that link, search your spiritual best friend. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, all over social media. I'm trying to expand and trying to grow, day by day. But that's where everybody can find me, and yeah, all that fun stuff.
Wonderful. And I was on episode 25 of Josh's podcast, Your Spiritual Best Friend. He covered my birth chart. And as he mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I did a tarot reading for him in a separate bonus episode, so to speak. And it was so much fun. And his podcast is so great to listen to. And you cover interviewees from all walks of life and different, in different fields of work. And I noticed that you're building so much of a network, and you're getting to know even more people. And some of your recent episodes have been really interesting people. So thank you for doing what you're doing. And I just appreciate you talking with me today.
Of course, Juan, and I appreciate you wanting me to come on your podcast as well. And I definitely have tuned into a couple of your episodes as well. And I really like it. I like the message. I like the feel of it. Keep doing what you're doing, Juan, and being great.
I appreciate that so much, Josh. Well, I'll leave you to your day. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you for the time and the opportunity.
If you have a question or topic you want me to cover on Third Eyesight, head to my website, juanfranciscospirit.com/contact, and send a message my way. If you really enjoyed this episode, leave a review wherever you listen. I'd really appreciate it.